The slave cart lurched through iron gates, and Lixara Night Whisper tasted blood. She'd bitten through her tongue again. Not that it mattered. She couldn't taste it anymore. 5 years of chains had stolen that from her first. The wheels groaned over cobblestones she remembered laying with her own hands back when this keep belonged to her.
You must come with me now. It's
back
not
when
safe.
her legs
I can't.
worked.
My place
Back
is
when
here.
she had a
Staying
name
means
that meant
death,
something
please.
besides suffering. Stop the cart. Alphaking Kieran Ashenblade's voice cut through winter air like a blade through flesh. Lyra didn't look up. She'd learned not to hope. Hope hurt worse than broken bones. My king, the crippled one, won't fetch much at market, the slaver wheezed. Better too. I said stop. The cart shuddered to silence. Lyra kept her eyes on the straw beneath her ruined legs. Twisted things bent at angles that made healers weep. The slavers had done it deliberately, methodically. Breaking bone, letting it heal wrong, breaking it again. So she could never run. So she could never shift. So she would never be anything but property. Bring her to the courtyard. Kieran's boots crunched closer. I want Emberwolf fed. He hasn't eaten in 3 days. Lyra's heart stuttered. Everyone knew about Emberwolf. 300 pounds of black fur and ancient rage. The Alpha's executioner. The beast who tore traitors apart while the pack watched. Rough hands grabbed her arms. Lyra didn't scream. She'd used up all her screams 2 winters ago in a cage that smelled like death and tasted like despair. They dragged her across stones that remembered her footsteps, past gardens where she'd planted roses that still bloomed without her, through gates she'd ordered open to refugees, to orphans, to anyone who needed sanctuary. The pack gathered like ravens to a feast, 500 wolves in human skin waiting to watch a cripple die. Lyra recognized faces. Orion's Stonemaw, the beta who'd stood at her wedding. Young mothers she'd helped through difficult births. Warriors she'd trained to protect, not destroy. None of them met her eyes. The massive iron cage stood in the courtyard center. Inside, something growled, low, deep. The sound made the earth tremble and wolves whimper. Emberwolf. The guards threw her down 10 feet from the cage. Lyra's legs screamed. She bit down on nothing-tasting phantom copper and forced her head up. She would die looking at the sky. That much at least they couldn't take from her. Open it, Kieran commanded. The cage door shrieked like a dying thing. Silence fell. The kind of silence that comes before avalanches, before world's end. Then Emberwolf exploded into the courtyard. Black as midnight, scarred as a battlefield, eyes burning amber with something older than pack law. 300 pounds of muscle and murder claws tearing gouges and stone chains screaming behind him like the damned. He charged. Straight at her, Lyra watched death approach and felt nothing but tired relief. Finally it would be over. 10 feet away, Emberwolf's legs locked. His massive body shuddered. Violently, like something inside him was tearing itself apart. Then the most feared creature in the northern territories lowered his head, tucked his scarred paws beneath him, and pressed his muzzle to the dirt at her broken feet. He wept. Great shuddering sobs that came from somewhere deeper than animal instinct. Grief 5 years buried erupting all at once. The courtyard held its breath. Lyra's hand moved without permission. Fingers threading into fur she thought she'd never touch again. Emberwolf, she whispered. The beast keened, pressed closer, and something in her chest that had been frozen for 5 years cracked open. Impossible. The word came from the crowd, then another. Impossible, impossible. Boots approached, slow, deliberate. Lyra knew those footsteps the way she knew her own heartbeat. She turned. Kieran Ashenblade stood 3 feet away, silver eyes wide with something that looked like hope and tasted like lies. 5 years had carved him hollow, all sharp edges and cold fury wrapped in black leather. Scars mapped his face now. New ones, the kind that came from fighting wars inside yourself. He'd been beautiful when they married, beautiful in the way sharp things are beautiful, dangerous and perfect and hers. This man wore her husband's face but belonged to something darker. Lixara, her name broke in his throat. The pack gasped, murmurs rising like a flood. That name, that ghost, the traitor queen they'd executed 5 years ago. Lyra met his silver eyes with her amber ones and said nothing. What was there to say? He'd stood on the ramparts and watched them drag her to the executioner's stone, watched them strike the blade, watched them burn what they said was her body. He'd let it happen. Kieran dropped to his knees, right there, in front of the entire pack. The Alphaking kneeling in dirt before a crippled slave. His hand reached for hers, trembling. Lyra, moon above. Lyra. She should pull away, should spit in his face, should do anything except let him touch her. But his fingers were warm, and she was so cold. I thought you were dead, he whispered, then leaned close enough that only she could hear, close enough that his breath touched her ear. I know. 2 words, quiet as snowfall, sharp as betrayal. Lyra's world tilted, spun. Those words didn't mean what they should mean. They meant her vision grayed at the edges. Ember Wolf's whine sounded distant. Kieran's arms caught her before she hit stone, and the last thing Lyra saw before darkness claimed her was his face, and the terrible, calculated certainty in his silver eyes. Silk sheets, down pillows, the scent of lavender and wood smoke. Lyra's eyes snapped open. She knew this room, knew the cream curtains she'd chosen because they reminded her of wheat fields, knew the oak furniture she'd carved runes of protection into, knew the way morning light painted gold across walls she'd selected for their warmth. The royal chambers, her chambers. Panic clawed up her throat. This was wrong. This was worse than the cages. This was cruelty dressed as mercy. Easy, Kieran's voice came from the chair beside the bed. You're safe. Lyra turned her head, slowly. Every movement cost her. He looked like he hadn't slept. Still wearing yesterday's leathers, jaw dark with stubble, silver eyes bloodshot. A glass of untouched whiskey sat on the table beside him. Safe, Lyra repeated. The word tasted like ash, like lies. I was safe when I was your wife, your queen. Standing trial for treason I didn't commit. Lyra, I was safe when the council dragged me from our bed while you watched. Her voice stayed flat. Dead, safer that way. How did that safety work out? He flinched. Good. Let him bleed a little. I didn't let them execute you, Kieran said quietly. I let them think I did. The room tilted. What? The body they burned wasn't yours. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. Her name was Mira, a criminal sentenced to death. Similar build. I had her face altered by a flesh witch. The council believed it was you. The pack believed it. Even I had to pretend to believe it, or they'd have known. Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs. You're lying. I'm not. Kieran's hands clenched into fists. The night before your execution, I had you taken, drugged. My most trusted operative smuggled you out of the keep. The plan was to hide you in Shadowfang territory until I could root out whoever framed you. Then why? Lyra's throat closed. Why was I sold to slavers? Why did they break my legs? Why 5 years in hell? Something cracked in Kieran's expression. Pain, real and raw and devastating. Because my operative betrayed me, took my gold, took you, and sold you to the highest bidder. By the time I discovered it, you'd vanished. No trail. No trace, just gone. He stood, paced to the window. I tore the territory apart looking for you, executed 3 council members who I proved took bribes, exiled my own mother when I discovered she'd helped orchestrate your trial, became the tyrant they whispered about because mercy had failed, kindness had failed, everything I believed in had failed. Lyra stared at his back, at the tension in his shoulders, at the man who'd just upended every truth she'd built her survival on. You expect me to believe this, she said slowly, that you tried to save me? No. Kieran turned, met her eyes. I expect you to hate me. I failed you. My plan failed. You suffered because of my choices. But Lyra, 2 months ago, my intelligence network finally found you. Tracked you across 3 territories to a merchant caravan heading here. Ice flooded her veins. 2 months. Yes. You've known I was alive for 2 months. Lyra's hands fisted in silk sheets. And you let me stay a slave. Let me be beaten. I let you come home. Kieran interrupted, voice hard. Because the woman who framed you is still here. Still in power, still poisoning everything she touches. If I'd rescued you quietly, she'd have you killed within a week. But if you returned publicly as a slave, broken and helpless, she'd underestimate me, Lyra finished. Understanding crashed over her like a wave. You're using me as bait. I'm using us as bait. He moved closer. Vespera Thornvale thinks she's won, thinks you're too damaged to be a threat, thinks I'm too grief-stricken to see her manipulation. She's planning something big, and I need her to show her hand before I can destroy her. Vespera, Lyra's heart stuttered at the name. Beautiful, brilliant Vespera, who'd been her sister's closest friend, who'd wept at Sylvain's funeral 3 years ago, who'd offered comfort when Lyra drowned in grief. Vespera, Lyra whispered. You think Vespera framed me? I know she did. Kieran's jaw clenched. I have evidence, financial records, forged documents in her chambers, but I don't have proof that will convince the pack. Not yet. That's why you need me to play victim while you play puppet. Lyra cut him off. Anger burned through shock. You need me broken and helpless while you pretend to dance to her strings. I need you to trust me. Kieran knelt beside the bed. I know I don't deserve it. I know every bone in your body is screaming at you to run. But Lyra, we're stronger together. We always were. Lyra looked at him, really looked, at the scars, the exhaustion, the desperate hope warring with expected rejection. He'd become a monster hunting monsters, while she'd become something harder, something that had learned to survive by swallowing screams. I don't forgive you, she said finally, for watching them take me, for not tearing down this keep stone by stone when they touched me, for 5 years of hell even if you tried to prevent it. I know, but I'll work with you. Lyra's voice hardened, because Vespera took everything from me, my throne, my people, my body, She stopped, couldn't say Sylvain's name yet. I want her to pay. Kieran's exhale shook. Then we have an accord. One condition. Lyra held his gaze. No more lies, no more secrets. No more using me as a piece in your games without my knowledge. Agreed. And if I find out you've been playing me, then I'll hand you the blade myself, Kieran finished. A knock interrupted them. The door opened to reveal an elderly woman with silver hair braided down her back, sharp eyes that missed nothing, and the kind of face that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. Finally awake, the woman said. Good. We have work to do. Thessaly. Relief softened Kieran's features. This is Thessaly Moonroot, Lyra interrupted. Memory surfaced. You were the master healer when I ruled. Still am. Thessaly crossed to the bed, movements brisk. Though master feels presumptuous when the moon herself is involved. Let me see your legs, child. Lyra hesitated, then drew back the sheets. Thessaly's expression didn't change. She'd mummied the twisted limbs with clinical efficiency, fingers probing bone that had healed wrong 3 times over. They knew what they were doing, breaking them to prevent shifting, cruel but effective. Can you fix them? Kieran asked. No, Thessaly straightened, but that's not the interesting part. She moved to a basin, washing her hands. Tell me, Lixara Night Whisper, when did you lose your sense of taste? The question hit like a physical blow. How did you? I'm old. I notice things. Thessaly dried her hands. Your sense of taste. When, 5 years ago, Lyra's throat tightened. In the first cage, I thought it was the trauma, the terror, and your sense of smell. Cold dread pooled in Lyra's stomach. What? When I entered this room, I carried a sachet of bloodroot, potent, distinctive. Most wolves would have scented it from the hallway. Thessaly pulled a small pouch from her pocket. You didn't react. Lyra inhaled. Nothing, just air. Empty, scentless air. I can smell, she protested weakly. Can you? Thessaly opened the pouch, held it beneath Lyra's nose. Tell me what this is. Nothing, no scent, no information, just void where sensation should be. I don't understand, Lyra whispered. Thessaly and Kieran exchanged a look, heavy, significant. There's something you need to know, Kieran said carefully. Something about your bloodline, about why you survived what should have killed you. I don't have time for riddles, not a riddle. Thessaly sat on the bed's edge. A legacy. Your mother's family traced back to Lunara First Voice, the last documented moonsinger. The words meant nothing. Moonsinger. A gift that skips generations, sometimes centuries. Thessaly's eyes gleamed. The ability to command any wolf through voice alone, to compel obedience, to unite packs, to prevent violence through dominance that transcends physical strength. Lyra shook her head. That's myth, children's tales. Then explain why you couldn't shift after your wolf died, but you survived. Thessaly leaned forward. Explain why the trauma that should have killed you instead transformed you. Explain why your senses are vanishing one by one. What? Moonsinger abilities don't come free. Thessaly's voice gentled. The gift demands payment. Each time you use it, you sacrifice a sense. Taste first because it's least necessary for survival. Smell next. Then touch. Hearing. Sight. Lyra's hands shook. It takes everything. Only if you use it recklessly. Thessaly gripped her shoulder. But used carefully, strategically, it could reclaim your throne. Could expose the woman who destroyed you. Could remake this pack into something worth ruling. Lyra looked at Kieran. You knew about this. Thessaly suspected. We needed you conscious to confirm. He moved closer. Lyra, I know this is overwhelming, but we need to test it. Need to understand what you can do. Test it how? Kieran called toward the door. Orion. The beta entered, broad-shouldered, scarred with eyes that held wariness and old loyalty. He'd been at her wedding, had danced with her at the celebration after, had voted for her execution when Vespera's evidence seemed incontrovertible. My king. Orion's voice roughened when he saw Lyra. Queen Lixara. I stand in the center of the room, Lyra said. Just words, normal words. Except she felt something coil in her chest, like moonlight translated to sound, like the pull of tide-given voice. Orion's legs moved, not because he chose to, but because his body responded before his mind could refuse. He stood where she'd indicated, face pale, breathing hard. What? He tried to step away. Couldn't. What is this? Sit, Lyra commanded, pushing will into the word. Orion's knees buckled. He sat hard, terror dawning in his eyes. You're controlling me. Not a question. An accusation. You're in my head. Guilt crashed through Lyra. This was violation. This was everything she'd endured reflected back. Release him, Thessaly said quietly. Lyra let the command dissolve. Orion scrambled backward, hand on his sword, staring at her like she'd become something monstrous. I'm sorry, Lyra started. I didn't mean that, Kieran interrupted, voice rough with something like awe is power, real power. The kind that could make every wolf in this territory kneel. I don't want them to kneel, Lyra's hands fisted. I want them to choose, to follow because they believe, not because I force them. Then you'll be the rarest kind of moon singer. Thessaly stood, one with conscience, with restraint, with the wisdom to know that true strength isn't about who you can control, but when you choose not to. Orion still hadn't moved, still watched Lyra like she might command him to cut his own throat. I won't use it on you again, Lyra told him. On any of you. Not without consent, not without need, I promise. Promises from queens. Orion's laugh sounded broken. Forgive me if I don't find much comfort there. He left. The door closed with finality. Lyra looked at her hands, these broken, scarred things that could now break wills as easily as bones had been broken in her. I need to practice, she said. Need to learn control before I lose another sense. We have time, Kieran assured her. Do we? Lyra met his eyes. You said Vespera is planning something. Something big. How much time before she makes her move? Kieran and Thessaly exchanged another weighted look. What? Lyra demanded. What aren't you telling me? Vespera has been consolidating power, Kieran said carefully, placing her allies in key positions, building leverage over council members. She's patient, methodical. But she's been visiting someone regularly, in secret. He pulled a folded parchment from his jacket. My spies documented her movements. Every third night she leaves the keep, travels to the old cemetery beyond the eastern woods. Lyra's blood went cold. The cemetery, where Sylvain was buried, her twin, her other half, the sister who'd died 3 years ago in what everyone called a tragic accident, Sylvain who'd fallen from the western cliffs during a storm, whose body had washed up on the rocks below, whose funeral Vespera had attended weeping as though her own heart had broken. She visits Sylvain's grave, Lyra whispered, every third night for 3 years. Kieran's voice gentled. Lyra, I know this is painful, but we need to consider what anger surged, that Vespera mourns my sister, that she feels guilt. That's not evidence of conspiracy, Kieran. That's grief. Is it? Thessaly's question cut quiet and sharp. Or is it something else? Lyra wanted to argue. Wanted to defend the woman who'd held her when Sylvain died, who'd braided her hair and brought her tea and stayed through the darkest nights. But Vespera had also framed her for treason, had orchestrated her execution, had stolen 5 years of her life. If she could do that, what else was she capable of? Tell me about Sylvain's death, Thessaly said. Everything you remember. Lyra closed her eyes, remembered the storm that night. Rain like daggers, wind that screamed. Sylvain had gone for a walk despite the weather. She did that sometimes when court politics became too heavy. Needed the wild to remind her who she was. They'd found her body 3 days later. Broken on the rocks, drowned and destroyed. The pack healer said she'd slipped, that the cliffs were treacherous in storms, that it was a terrible accident, nothing more. But Sylvain had walked those cliffs since childhood, knew every stone, every dangerous edge. She wouldn't have slipped, Lyra said slowly. Not there, not on the western approach. She knew those cliffs better than anyone. What if she didn't slip? Kieran's voice dropped. What if she was pushed? The room spun. No, no, that's not. Vespera was the last person to see her alive. Thessaly interrupted. Did you know that Lara's breath stopped. What? I was the healer who examined Sylvain's body. Thessaly's expression hardened. I asked who'd last seen her. Vespera said they'd argued, that Sylvain had stormed off into the rain, that she'd tried to follow but lost her in the storm. An argument about what Vespera wouldn't say, called it private, court politics. Thessaly leaned forward. But Lixara, I examined that body. The injuries weren't consistent with a fall. The angle was wrong. The bruising suggested what Lyra demanded, suggested she was struck from behind before she went over the edge. The world stopped. Just stopped. Sylvain. Beautiful, laughing Sylvain, who'd been Lyra's mirror and compass and home, who'd made her promise they'd always protect each other, who'd died alone and afraid, and Vespera killed her. Lyra whispered, That's what you're saying. Vespera murdered my sister. I'm saying the evidence suggests it, Thessaly corrected, but I had no proof, no witnesses, and Vespera was, my friend, bitter laugh, my sister's best friend. Why would she? Lyra stopped, remembered. 3 years ago, the week before Sylvain died, a conversation overheard by accident. Vespera's voice tight with something desperate. He'll never see me while she exists, while both of them exist. Sylvain's response gentle but firm. Vespera Kieran loves Lyra. That won't change. You need to let this go. I've loved him since we were children. I know, but some loves aren't meant to be returned. Lyra had dismissed it. Thought Vespera would move on, find someone else, heal. Instead, she'd killed, plotted, destroyed. She loved you, Lyra said to Kieran, voice hollow. Vespera was obsessed with you, and Sylvain knew. Sylvain tried to make her see reason. So Vespera pushed her off a cliff. Kieran's hands curled into fists. Then with your sister dead and you consumed by grief, she framed you for treason. Removed both obstacles in one masterful stroke. The pieces fit. Perfectly. Horribly. But you survived, Thessaly added. Came back. And now Vespera visits your sister's grave every third night, probably ensuring the secret stays buried. Or, Kieran said quietly, she's gloating, telling Sylvain how she won, how she has everything she wanted. Rage ignited in Lyra's chest, cold and vast and absolutely merciless. When does she visit next? Her voice came out flat. Dead. Tomorrow night, Kieran answered. Then we follow her. Lyra met his eyes, saw her own fury reflected back. And we find out exactly what Vespera Thornvale has been doing at my sister's grave. Lyra. Tomorrow night, she repeated. I want to hear it. Need to hear her confess. Because some things you had to witness to believe. Had to see with your own eyes even if those eyes might not last much longer. Had to know with absolute certainty that the woman you'd called friend had murdered your family. Kieran nodded slowly. Tomorrow night. Outside storm clouds gathered over Ashenblade Keep, and Lyra welcomed the coming darkness. Vespera had made her in this darkness, had forged her in 5 years of torture and grief. Now she'd learn what monsters look like when they crawled back from hell. Not broken, but reborn. The cemetery waited beyond the eastern woods, silent as secrets, cold as betrayal. Lyra crouched behind a moss-covered tombstone, Kieran's warmth pressed against her left side, Emberwolf's solid bulk on her right. The beast had insisted on coming. Wouldn't let her out of his sight since she'd returned. Protective, possessive, desperate, like he was afraid she'd vanish again if he looked away. She's late, Kieran murmured, his breath frosted in winter air. Vespera's never late. She'll come. Lyra's voice stayed flat, had to. If she let emotion in now, she'd shatter. They'd waited 3 hours already. 3 hours of Lyra staring at Sylvain's gravestone, reading the inscription she'd carved herself, through tears that felt like they'd never stop. Sylvain Night Whisper, beloved sister, half of a whole, forever in moonlight. Lies. All of it lies. Because Sylvain wasn't at peace, wasn't in moonlight, was just bones in the ground crying out for justice no one could hear. Emberwolf's growl pulled her back. Low. Warning. Footsteps. Lyra pressed deeper into shadow. Watched. Vespera emerged from the tree line like a ghost in green silk. Still beautiful. Still perfect. Golden hair catching moonlight, emerald eyes bright even in darkness. She carried a single white rose. Lyra's stomach twisted. White roses had been Sylvain's favorite. Vespera approached the grave, knelt, placed the rose with practiced care. "Hello, old friend," she whispered. Lyra's hands clenched. "Friend," the word tasted like poison. "3 years," Vespera continued, voice soft, intimate. "3 years since I freed us both. You from your sister's shadow. Me from watching him love someone else." Kieran's hand found Lyra's, squeezed, grounding. "You shouldn't have tried to stop me." Vespera traced Sylvain's name carved in stone. "Shouldn't have said Kieran would never be mine. That some loves aren't meant to be returned." She laughed, quiet, broken. "But you were wrong. He's mine now. Has been for 5 years. Every decision he makes, I guide. Every policy he enacts, I suggest. Every night he sits alone in that throne room, drowning in grief, I'm there, offering comfort, offering strength." Bile rose in Lyra's throat. "Lixara's gone," Vespera said to the stone. "Broken somewhere so thoroughly she'll never threaten me again. And soon, so very soon, I'll have everything. The throne, the king, the power." She stood, brushed dirt from her silk. "Thank you for dying, Sylvain. For making this all possible." Then she turned, walked back toward the keep, humming the lullaby Sylvain used to sing. Lyra moved without thinking, rage propelling her broken body forward. She'd crawl if she had to, drag herself across frozen ground, wrap her hands around Vespera's throat, and Kieran caught her, arms like iron holding her back while she struggled. "Let me go," Lyra snarled. "Let me—" "Not yet," his voice in her ear, hard, certain. "Not until we have everything. Not until we can destroy her so completely she'll wish you'd killed her quickly." Emberwolf pressed against them both, warm, solid, anchoring. Lyra stopped fighting, went limp in Kieran's arms. Let the tears come, silent, burning. "I'm sorry," Kieran whispered, moon above Lyra. "I'm so sorry." They stayed there until Vespera's footsteps faded, until the cemetery returned to silence, until Lyra had cried out enough rage to think clearly again. "We need proof," she said finally, voice raw. "Her confession to a gravestone won't convince the pack." "I know." Kieran helped her up. "But now we know for certain. Emberwolf's whine cut him off. The beast was digging, claws tearing at frozen earth beside Sylvain's grave. "What's he doing?" Lyra asked. "I don't know." The wolf dug deeper, faster, desperate, like he was searching for something buried. Then he stopped, lowered his massive head, and when he lifted it again, something glowed between his teeth. A crystal, smooth, oval, pulsing with soft amber light. "Moon's mercy," Kieran breathed. "Is that—" Emberwolf dropped it at Lyra's feet, looked at her with eyes that begged understanding. Lyra picked it up, warm, vibrating against her palm. The moment her skin touched crystal, the world exploded into memory. Storm, rain like knives, wind screaming, Sylvain walking the western cliffs, hood pulled against weather. Not running, not fleeing, just walking, needing the wild to clear her head. Footsteps behind her. "Sylvain, wait," Vespera, breathless, desperate. Sylvain turned. "Vespera, what are you doing out here? I need to talk to you about Kieran, about your sister." "Not this again," Sylvain's voice gentled. "Vespera, you have to let him go. He loves Lyra. That won't change." "It will if Lyra's gone." Silence, just rain and wind and something terrible shifting in the air. "What did you say?" Sylvain stepped back. "I've tried everything." Vespera moved closer. "Tried to make him see me. Tried to compete. Tried to be patient. But he looks at her like she's the sun and I'm just shadow." "Vespera, if she disappeared, he'd grieve. But grief ends, and I'd be there. I'm always there." "You're talking about hurting my sister." Sylvain's voice hardened. "About treason. I'm talking about love." Vespera's hands clenched. "About wanting something so badly, it hollows you out. You wouldn't understand. You've never wanted anything you couldn't have." "I understand obsession." Sylvain stepped back again, closer to the cliff's edge. "And I understand when to walk away. Vespera, if you hurt Lyra, I'll tell Kieran. I'll tell everyone." "No," Vespera's voice dropped, flat, final. "You won't." She moved, fast, hands shoving hard against Sylvain's chest. Sylvain stumbled, caught herself, but Vespera shoved again. Harder. The edge crumbled. Sylvain fell, screaming Lyra's name, and Vespera stood there, watching. Until the screaming stopped. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the storm, "but some loves are worth killing for." The memory released Lyra like a drowning person breaking surface. She gasped, choked. Kieran caught her before she fell. "What?" He looked at the crystal, at Emberwolf. What is that? His memory, Lyra's voice shook. Emberwolf was there. He saw. He saw Vespera murder my sister. That's impossible. Emberwolf wasn't. He was. Understanding crashed over her. He was already cursed, already trapped in wolf form. He must have been in the woods, witnessed it, tried to help but couldn't, could only watch. Emberwolf whined, pressed his head against her stomach. And he's been carrying that memory for 3 years, Lyra whispered, fingers threading through black fur, unable to tell anyone, unable to make them understand. She looked at the crystal, at the glowing proof of murder. These, she said slowly, these are evidence. Physical evidence we can show the pack. If they believe it. Kieran took the crystal, turned it in moonlight. Memory crystals are rare, ancient. Most wolves won't even know what they're looking at. Then we teach them. Lyra's jaw set. We make them see. We need more than one. Kieran looked at Emberwolf. Do you have others? Memories of Vespera's conspiracy. The wolf's eyes gleamed. He turned, loped toward the forest. They followed. Lyra leaning on Kieran's legs, screaming but determination driving her forward. Emberwolf led them deep into the woods. To a hollow oak tree, ancient and gnarled. He squeezed inside, emerged with something in his jaws. A leather pouch. Old, worn. Inside, a dozen crystals glowed soft amber. Moon above, Kieran breathed. He's been collecting evidence. For years. Lyra touched one. Memory flooded in. Vespera in council chambers. Sliding gold across a table to Elder Casimir. This is everything you asked for. Good. The elderly man pocketed it. The forgery is complete. Lixara's seal, Lixara's handwriting. Even I can barely tell it's false. And the council votes secured. 4 members are mine completely. Their secrets ensure loyalty. Not loyalty. Vespera's smile turned sharp. Fear, much more reliable. Another crystal, another memory. Vespera in darkened chambers, speaking to someone in shadows. The body double is arranged. Yes, male voice. Unfamiliar. She'll burn in the queen's place. No one will know. And after the execution, the real queen will be taken, sold, broken so thoroughly she'll never threaten you again. Good. Make sure her legs are destroyed. Can't have her running back. More crystals, more evidence. A trail of conspiracy spanning 5 years. But one memory made Lyra's blood freeze. Council chambers. 1 year ago. Vespera speaking to Elder Casimir in private. Father, Lyra dropped the crystal, stared at Emberwolf. Emberwolf. Father, she whispered. Vespera called Casimir father. Kieran went very still. That's not possible. Vespera's father died 20 years ago, hunting accident. Or that's what everyone believes. Lyra's mind raced. But if Casimir is her real father, if he hid her true parentage, then everything she's done he's sanctioned. Kieran's voice dropped. Dangerous. The conspiracy goes deeper than one ambitious woman. It's a family plot. He's on the council. Lyra's hands trembled. Has been for 30 years. Respected. Trusted. If he's working with Vespera, then we're not just fighting a pretender. Kieran's eyes hardened. We're fighting an entrenched power structure. One with decades of leverage and secrets. Emberwolf whined, nudged another crystal toward Lyra. She picked it up, braced herself. The memory hit like lightning. 23 years ago, a young Vespera, barely 4 years old, crying in Casimir's study. Why can't I tell anyone you're my papa? Because little Thorn the world isn't ready to accept that an elder councilman had a daughter out of wedlock with a servant. Casimir wiped her tears. But someday when you're grown and powerful, everyone will know. Everyone will see how magnificent you are. Will I be a queen? Better than a queen, he smiled. You'll be the power behind the throne, the one who makes kings dance. Like a puppet master. Exactly like that. Fast forward. Vespera at 16. Beautiful. Dangerous. Watching Kieran train in the courtyard. I want him, she told Casimir. The Prince Vespera, you can't just want. I want him. Her voice hardened. Make it happen. He's betrothed to Lixara Night Whisper. Then unbetroth him. Casimir studied his secret daughter. This isn't a game. I never play games, father. I win wars. Another jump. Vespera at 24. Pacing Casimir's study. The wedding's in 3 months. 3 months until Kieran marries that weak, soft girl. Lixara is well loved. Removing her will be difficult. Not if we make the pack see she's dangerous. Vespera's eyes gleamed. Wartime. Treachery. A queen who conspires with enemies. You'd frame her for treason. I'd save this pack from weakness. Vespera leaned forward. And you'll help me. Because when I sit beside Kieran on that throne, your bloodline will finally rule. Everything you've worked for. Everything you've sacrificed. Casimir was quiet, then nodded. For the family. For the family. The memory released. Lyra swayed. Kieran steadied her. 23 years, she whispered. He's been grooming her for this since she was a child, teaching her to want power, to take what she desires regardless of cost. And Vespera learned well. Kieran's voice held barely leashed fury. But if Casimir's the puppet master, if he controls council votes, how many does he have? 4 confirmed, maybe 5. Kieran's jaw clenched. We need 7 votes to pass any major decision. He's 1 vote short of controlling the council completely. What happens if he gets that 7th vote? Then he can depose me legally, claim the Alpha King is unfit, install Vespera as regent. Lyra's heart stuttered. When the winter solstice trial, Kieran met her eyes. It's in 7 days. Ancient tradition. The pack gathers. Grievances are aired. Leadership can be challenged if council majority agrees the Alpha has failed in duties. 7 days. They had 7 days to gather evidence, expose conspiracy, and prevent a coup. We use the crystals, Lyra said. Show the pack Emberwolf's memories. Make them see what Vespera and Casimir have done. Memory crystals are ancient magic. Half the pack won't know how to read them. Then we teach them. Lyra's voice hardened. We show them murder, conspiracy, treason. We make the evidence so overwhelming they can't deny it. There's another problem. Kieran pulled a different crystal from the pouch. This one. Lyra touched it. Memory flooded. 7 years ago. A man in his 20s, handsome, proud, wearing insignia of Shadowfang Pack. Prince Rydian of Shadowfang visiting Ashenblade Keep for treaty negotiations. Vespera approaching, smiling. Prince Rydian, I'm Vespera Thornvale. I wondered if you'd honor me with a walk in the gardens. I apologize, Lady Thornvale, but I'm expected in council chambers. After then, perhaps another time. Vespera's smile didn't change, but her eyes did, something cold sliding behind Emerald. Later. Vespera in Casimir's study. The Shadowfang Prince rejected me. Vespera. He rejected me. Her voice stayed flat, deadly. Me? For what? For nothing. He didn't even have someone else. He just didn't want me. Not every man will want you. They should, she turned. I want him punished. You can't just punish visiting royalty because they declined a walk. Can't I? Her hands moved. Strange gestures. Words in a language that predated pack law. Dark magic. Blood magic. Vespera, what are you? He refused to walk with me as a man. Her voice took on something terrible. Let him walk on 4 legs instead. Let him know what it is to be reduced, to be dismissed. Power surged. Casimir tried to stop her. Too late. Somewhere in the keep, Prince Rydian screamed. Lyra dropped the crystal, stared at Emberwolf. At Rydian, Prince of Shadowfang, cursed for 7 years because he'd politely declined a walk with the woman he didn't know. She cursed you, Lyra whispered, because you said no. Emberwolf Rydian lowered his head, shame in every line. That's why you were in the northern waste dying. Understanding clicked. You were trying to get home, to Shadowfang territory, but the curse weakened you, made you vulnerable. The wolf nodded. And I found you. Lyra's hands shook. Thought you were just a wolf pup. Brought you to the keep. Fed you. Raised you. Another nod, eyes bright with unshed tears. You've been trying to tell me. Lyra's voice cracked. For 7 years, you've been trapped. Unable to speak. Unable to warn me about Vespera. Unable to stop any of this. Kieran knelt beside the wolf. Can the curse be broken? Rydian whined, uncertain. Thessaly might know, Lyra said. If anyone understands ancient magic, it's her. We ask her when we return. Kieran stood. But right now we need to focus on the trial, on exposing Vespera and Casimir before they can make their move. How? Lyra looked at the crystals. A dozen pieces of evidence. Even with these, Casimir controls 4 council votes, maybe 5. He'll claim the crystals are fabricated. Dark magic designed to fool the pack. Then we need the 5th vote to stay neutral. Kieran's expression hardened. Need to find leverage over whoever Casimir's targeting. Lyra said slowly, we find a way to make the pack trust the crystals, to prove they're real beyond doubt. How? She looked at Emberwolf, at Rydian trapped in fur and rage in 7 years of silence. We break the curse, she said publicly. During the trial, Show the pack that this wolf is Prince Ridian. Let him testify in his own voice about what Vespera did. You don't know if you can break it. No, Lyra's jaw set, but I have to try because he's the only witness who can corroborate the crystals. The only proof that will make them believe. Kieran was quiet, then nodded. We have 7 days. Then we'd better not waste them. They gathered the crystals, all 12. Evidence of murder, conspiracy, dark magic, and treason. Enough to destroy Vespera and Casimir. If they could make the pack believe. The next 3 days blurred into desperate preparation. Lyra trained with Thessaly, pushing her moonsinger abilities until her head pounded and her remaining senses screamed. Learning to command multiple wolves at once. To project her voice across distances. To compel truth from unwilling throats. Each session cost her. She felt her sense of smell fading completely. Sense becoming memory. The world flattening into sight and sound and touch. You're burning through your senses too quickly, Thessaly warned. If you keep this pace, you'll be deaf before the trial. Then I'd better make every word count. Lyra's voice stayed hard, determined. She couldn't stop, couldn't slow down. Because in 4 days, everything would be decided. Win and she'd reclaim her throne. Expose her sister's murderer. Save the pack from tyranny. Lose and Vespera would cement her power. Casimir would control the council. And Lyra would be executed. For real this time. Kieran spent those 3 days gathering allies. Quiet conversations with warriors who remembered Lyra's reign. With civilians who'd suffered under harsh policies. With anyone who might stand with them when the moment came. He found 12 wolves willing to testify. 12 voices to speak against Vespera's corruption. Not enough to sway the council, but enough to plant doubt. Orion worked his contacts. Discovered which council member Casimir was pressuring for that crucial 5th vote. Elder Marin, a woman in her 50s widowed with 2 grown sons serving in the pack guard. Casimir had evidence of her eldest son's desertion during the Great Siege. Evidence that would see the young man executed for cowardice. Marin had to choose vote with Casimir or watch her son die. We can't compete with that, Orion said grimly. A mother won't sacrifice her child, not even for the right cause. Then we find different leverage, Lyra said. Something that matters more than fear. What matters more than family? Truth. Lyra met his eyes. Absolute, incontrovertible truth. We show her the crystals. Show her what Vespera and Casimir really are. Let her decide if she wants to serve murderers. And if she chooses her son anyway, then we respect that choice. Lyra's voice gentled. And find another way. They approached Marin on the 4th day. In her chambers. Private. Safe. The elder councilwoman listened to their evidence. Watched memory crystals with growing horror. Saw Sylvain's murder. Saw Vespera's confession to Casimir. Saw the conspiracy unfold in amber light. When the final crystal faded, Marin sat in silence. My son, she said finally, Casimir will kill him if I don't vote his way. I know, Lyra leaned forward, and I can't promise to save him. Can't guarantee anything except that if Vespera and Casimir win, more sons will die. More families will be destroyed. More innocents will suffer. You're asking me to choose the pack over my child. I'm asking you to choose truth over fear. Lyra's hands trembled. I know what it costs. Moon above, I know. But Marin, your son, deserted because he was terrified. Because the war was brutal and he was barely 20. That doesn't make him evil. Just human. Casimir says it makes him a coward. Casimir says whatever serves his purposes. Kieran's voice hardened. He'd call your son coward. Call Lyra traitor. Call anyone who opposes him weak. Because that's what tyrants do. They twist truth until good people believe lies. Marin closed her eyes. What would you have me do? Vote your conscience at the trial, Lyra said. Abstain if you must, but don't let Casimir make you complicit in murder. The elder councilwoman was quiet for a long time. I'll abstain, she said finally. I won't vote with him, but I can't vote against him. Not while he holds my son's life. It wasn't a victory, but it was enough. Casimir would have 4 votes, not 5, not enough for majority. The trial would be decided by the pack itself, by popular support, by whoever told the most convincing story. On the 7th day, winter solstice arrived cold and clear. The pack gathered in the great hall. 500 wolves, human and furred, filling every available space. Lyra stood in the preparation chamber staring at her reflection. They'd dressed her in white, simple, clean, queen's colors without the crown, her legs still twisted, her body still scarred. But her eyes burned amber with purpose. Thessaly entered. It's time. I'm ready. Are you, the old healer studied her. You know what using your voice at full power will cost, what you'll lose. My hearing, Lyra's hand steadied. I know, and you'll do it anyway. For Sylvain, for the pack, for everyone Vespera destroyed. Lyra turned. Yes, I'll do it anyway. Thessaly nodded, offered her arm. Together they walked toward the great hall, toward judgment, toward the moment that would decide everything. The doors opened. 500 wolves fell silent. Lyra stepped into the hall and the whispers started, spreading like wildfire. The dead queen, walking, alive. Vespera stood at the hall's far end beside Casimir, her face drained of color. Impossible, she whispered. Hello, Vespera. Lyra's voice carried, clear, strong. Did you miss me? The trial had begun. The great hall held its breath. 500 wolves, 500 pairs of eyes locked on the woman they'd mourned. The queen they'd watched burn, the ghost walking through their reality like death had forgotten to keep her. Lyra moved forward. Each step cost her, broken legs screaming, but she kept her spine straight, kept her chin high, kept moving toward the judgment circle at the hall's center. Vespera recovered first, always did. That was her gift, turning shock into strategy before anyone else could think. Remarkable, she said, voice smooth as silk over steel. An imposter, wearing our dead queen's face, using dark magic to deceive us. Dark magic, Lyra stopped at the circle's edge. Is that what you call survival? I call it blasphemy. Vespera turned to address the pack. This woman claims to be Lixara Night Whisper, but our queen died 5 years ago. We saw her executed, saw her burn. You saw theater. Lyra's voice carried to every corner. Saw what you were meant to see. A body that wasn't mine. Ashes that belonged to someone else. A lie so perfect, you never questioned it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Confusion, doubt, fear. Elder Casimir stepped forward, 65 years old, silver-haired, respected for 3 decades of council service. The perfect mask for a conspirator. If you are truly Lixara Night Whisper, he said carefully, then prove it. Tell us something only our queen would know. Lyra met his eyes, saw calculation there, saw him already planning how to discredit whatever she said. The night before my wedding, she said quietly, Sylvain and I stayed up until dawn. We sat in the eastern gardens. She braided white roses into my hair and told me she was afraid. The hall went silent, afraid of what she wouldn't say. Just held my hands and made me promise we'd always protect each other. That no matter what happened, we'd stand together. Lyra's voice cracked. She let them hear the grief. I promised, but I wasn't there when she needed me. Wasn't there when someone pushed her off the western cliffs in a storm. Wasn't there to protect her from the woman who called herself friend while plotting murder. She turned to Vespera. Tell them how Sylvain died. A tragic accident. Vespera's face showed perfect sorrow. I was the last to see her alive. We argued. She ran into the storm. I tried to follow, but you pushed her. Lyra's voice cut like a blade. You murdered her because she knew your plan. Knew you intended to frame me for treason. Knew you'd stop at nothing to have what you wanted. Lies. Vespera's hands clenched. Desperate lies from a desperate woman. Then let's show them truth. Lyra pulled a crystal from her pocket, held it high. This is a memory crystal, ancient magic, rare, precious, and completely accurate. She looked at the pack, at faces hungry for answers. What I'm about to show you will be difficult to witness, but you deserve to know, deserve to see what's been done in your name. Thessaly stepped forward, took the crystal, placed it in a silver basin at the hall's center. The old healer's hands moved. Ancient words, older magic. The crystal blazed. Light exploded upward, coalesced into image, into memory. The pack watched Vespera push Sylvain off the western cliffs, watched her stand there, unmoved, while Lyra's twin sister screamed and fell, and died. Watched her whisper, some loves are worth killing for. Gasps, cries, horror spreading like plague. Vespera's face went white. That's fabricated, dark magic designed to show truth. Lyra pulled another crystal. Then let's see more. Another memory. Vespera and Casimir planning Lyra's frame. Bribing council members, arranging false evidence. Another. Vespera cursing Prince Ridian of Shadowfang for refusing her advances. Another. Casimir revealing himself as Vespera's secret father. 23 years of grooming his daughter for power. 12 crystals, 12 memories, 12 pieces of incontrovertible truth. By the time the final crystal faded, the hall churned with rage. Lies, Vespera shouted. All of it lies. Crystals can be fabricated. Memories can be false. You're watching illusions designed to destroy me. Then explain this. A new voice, deep, resonant, familiar. The crowd parted. Emberwolf padded into the judgment circle. 300 pounds of black fur and barely contained fury. He stopped beside Lyra, looked up at her with amber eyes that begged permission. Lyra understood what he was asking, what it would cost her. Breaking a curse this old, this powerful would require everything. Every drop of Moonsinger ability she had left, every sense she still possessed. She'd be blind, deaf, probably mute, but Rydian would be free, would be able to testify in his own voice, would be the proof that couldn't be denied. Lyra knelt, pressed her forehead to Emberwolf's. Are you sure? The wolf whined, nodded. Then let's give them truth they can't ignore. She closed her eyes, reached deep, found the Moonsinger power coiled in her chest like living moonlight, and pulled. Her voice rose. Not words, just sound, pure and crystalline and absolutely overwhelming. The song of the first moon, the melody that had united warring packs millennia ago. Power surged through her, through the wolf, into the curse that bound him. Dark magic screamed, fought, tried to hold. Lyra sang harder, felt her hearing begin to fade, felt the world's sounds becoming distant, muffled, dying. But she didn't stop, couldn't stop, because Rydian deserved freedom, deserved his voice back after 7 years of silence. The curse shattered, light exploded from Emberwolf, blinding, beautiful, Merino. When it faded, a man knelt where the wolf had been, 30 years old, dark hair to his shoulders, amber eyes that still held wolfish gold, scars crisscrossing his naked body like a roadmap of suffering. Prince Rydian of Shadowfang. The hall erupted. Rydian rose slowly, unsteady, like he'd forgotten how human legs worked. I am Prince Rydian of Shadowfang, he said, his voice rough from disuse. 7 years ago, I came to this keep for treaty negotiations. Lady Vespera Thornvale invited me to walk with her in the gardens. I declined politely. That night, she cursed me, used blood magic to trap me in wolf form. He turned to face Vespera. I heard everything, saw everything. I was there when you pushed Sylvain Nightwhisper off the cliffs. Was there when you confessed to your father. Was there when you plotted to frame Queen Lixara for treason. I witnessed it all, but couldn't speak, couldn't warn, couldn't stop you. His voice hardened. Until now. Vespera backed away. He's lying. They're all lying. This is a conspiracy to what? Kieran's voice cut through her desperation. To expose your crimes, to show the pack what you really are. He moved to Lyra's side, saw her swaying, caught her before she fell. What did you do? He whispered, horror in his eyes. What I had to. Lyra's voice came out distant, muffled, like hearing herself underwater. Her vision grayed at the edges, everything becoming shadow. Lyra, no. It's done, mine. She smiled, tasted blood. Worth it. Then her sight died completely. Darkness, absolute. Silence, nearly complete. Just her heartbeat, Kieran's breathing, the fading echo of her own voice. Can someone bring clothes for Prince Rydian? Kieran called. His voice sounded far away. Lyra felt him lower her to sitting, felt his warmth beside her. I'm here, he murmured against her ear. I'm right here. The trial continued around them. Lyra heard fragments through the wall of her fading hearing. Elder Marin's voice shaking but clear. I abstain from supporting Elder Casimir's motion. I will not vote with a man who's orchestrated such evil. Other council members, turning one by one. The votes crumbling. Casimir's voice desperate now. This is madness. You're destroying pack stability based on truth, Orion interrupted. The Beta's voice carried authority. Based on evidence. Based on the testimony of a sovereign prince and a queen we thought dead. I call for immediate judgment, another council member said. All in favor of stripping Vesper Thornvale and Casimir Thornvale of name, rank, and pack. The vote passed, 6-1. Only Casimir voted against. You are hereby exiled, Kieran's voice rang out. Forbidden from ever returning to these lands. If you set foot in our territory again, you will be executed on sight. Lyra felt movement, heard Vespera's voice shrill with rage. This isn't over. You think you've won, but she stopped. Sudden, sharp, Lyra felt it through the bond that still connected her to the pack. Felt Vespera trying to move. Unable to. What? Vespera's voice shook. What are you doing to me? Nothing. Kieran's voice held grim satisfaction. Lyra, are you? Lyra realized she was the one holding Vespera frozen. Her moonsinger ability triggered by instinct when Vespera moved toward her. She released it. Felt Vespera stumble. Take them, Kieran commanded, and escort them to the border. Make sure they understand what happens if they return. Guards moved, dragged Vespera and Casimir from the hall. Their protests faded into distance, into silence. The pack waited, uncertain, looking to Kieran for guidance. He stood, helped Lyra to her feet. 5 years ago, he said, voice carrying to every corner. I watched a woman I loved be condemned for crimes she didn't commit. Watched her dragged to execution, believed her dead, became something dark and cruel in my grief. He paused. I thought strength meant ruling through fear. Thought mercy was weakness. Thought the only way to protect this pack was to make them afraid of me. I was wrong. Lyra felt him turn to her, felt his hand find hers. This woman survived 5 years of hell, torture, slavery, bones broken so she could never run, wolf killed so she could never shift. Every reason to become as cruel as those who hurt her. But she didn't. She stayed kind, stayed merciful, stayed the woman I fell in love with. His voice roughened. She sacrificed her sight to free an innocent man, gave up her hearing to show you truth, lost everything to save us from tyranny. That is strength, real strength. The kind that chooses compassion even when vengeance would be easier. Silence. Then what would you have us do, my king, Orion asked. I would have you choose. Kieran's hand tightened on Lyra's. Choose whether you want leaders who rule through fear or through partnership. Whether you want strength that destroys or strength that builds. I offer you Lixara Night Whisper and myself as co-rulers. Equals. Partners. Two halves making one whole. Does the pack accept? Lyra held her breath. Couldn't see their faces. Could barely hear their voices. But she felt it. Through the pack bond. Through the connection every wolf shared. Acceptance, warm and certain and absolute. The howl started with one wolf, then another, then hundreds. The sound shook the great hall's foundations. Shook Lyra's chest. Shook the darkness pressing around her. They were saying yes. Tears carved tracks down Lyra's cheeks. She felt Kieran pull her close. Felt him trembling. We did it, he whispered. Moon above, we did it. We did. Lyra's voice came out hoarse, ruined, but triumphant. Now comes the hard part. What's that actually ruling? Kieran laughed. Broken, relieved, perfect. Around them the pack celebrated. Lyra couldn't see it, could barely hear it, but she felt it, in the warmth pressing close, in the hands that reached to touch her gently, in the pack bond thrumming with joy. She'd come home, finally, truly home. 6 months changed everything. Lyra stood on the eastern ramparts, wind playing with her unbound hair. She couldn't see the sunset Kieran described crimson bleeding into gold painting the keep in fire. Couldn't hear the evening songs of birds returning to nests. But she felt the warmth, felt Kieran's solid presence at her back, his arms wrapped around her waist. Tell me, she said softly, the memorial garden. His voice held a smile. Someone left white roses again, fresh ones. They do every day now. Different people keeping Sylvain's memory alive. Lyra's throat tightened. They'd moved her twin's grave closer to the keep, carved Vespera's confession into the stone as eternal testimony. Justice preserved in granite. The training grounds are full, Kieran continued. Orion's teaching young wolves negotiation before combat. Your influence. And the council. Marin proposed expanding civilian representation. 3 new seats, the vote passed unanimously. Pride warmed Lyra's chest. They were building something new, something better. There's one more thing. Kieran's hand found hers, guided it to her own back. Lyra's fingers traced raised skin, the brand. The traitor's mark burned into her flesh 5 years ago, except it wasn't a brand anymore. Ridges formed patterns under her touch. Deliberate. Beautiful, the moon in full phase surrounded by roses and wolves intertwined. When she whispered, 3 months ago, after you resolved that border dispute without bloodshed. Kieran's fingers traced with hers. Thessaly thinks your moonsinger magic rewrote it. Your body marking the transformation. From victim to ruler. From broken to whole. From traitor's shame to queen's crown. The poetry of it stole her breath. I wish I could see it. You don't need to see it. Kieran turned her gently. His hands cupped her face. You lived it. Every scar, every sacrifice, every choice to rise instead of break. That's the real transformation. The mark just makes it visible. Lyra leaned into his touch. Let the truth of his words settle into her bones. They'd tried to destroy her. Had broken her body, killed her wolf, stolen her senses. Had marked her as traitor and left her for dead. But she'd kept the one thing they couldn't touch. Her choice to survive, to forgive, to lead with mercy when vengeance screamed louder. Choice to sacrifice her remaining senses to free an innocent man and expose murderers. Choice to believe that strength wasn't about who you could destroy, but what you could endure and still choose kindness. I'm ready to go in, Lyra said. Her legs ached. Always would. Some wounds didn't heal. Became part of you instead. Kieran helped her navigate corridors she knew by heart now. Counted steps. Felt wall textures change. Their chambers waited. Warm, safe. Home. He settled her in the reading chair positioned perfectly by the fire. She felt heat on her face. Couldn't hear the flames, but remembered their crackle. Something happy tonight, she requested. Kieran pulled a book from the shelf. His voice washed over her in waves she felt more than heard. Stories of wolves finding family, of leaders choosing compassion, of packs united not by fear, but by love. Stories that sounded like the future they were building. Lyra closed her sightless eyes. Let his voice paint pictures in the darkness behind them. Outside, the moon rose full and bright over Ashenblade Keep. Inside, a blind queen who'd traded sight for justice sat with the king who'd learned mercy from her sacrifice. And between them, they held their broken healing pack in hands that chose gentleness, even when the world had taught them cruelty. The traitor's brand had become a queen's crown. The broken slave had become an unbreakable ruler. And the song she sang with every choice, every mercy, every day she rose despite the pain was hope. Hope that strength could include kindness, that power didn't require fear, that even when darkness took everything, you could still choose light. Lyra reached for Kieran's hand, found it waiting. He squeezed, understanding without words. And together in the silence and the dark, they built a kingdom worth the price she'd paid.